The NFL world saw yet another massive shift in quarterback contracts with the Dak Prescott deal that was signed yesterday morning. What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well on this Victory Monday. If you're a Seahawks fan, you probably are doing well because we're still feeling pretty good about yesterday's results. And there's a lot to talk about regarding yesterday's game. There's a lot to talk about regarding this team. But I want to start the day off by having a conversation about something that happened yesterday that didn't really have anything to do with the Seattle Seahawks. Because while on the surface, it has nothing to do with us, at some point, maybe next year, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, it will have everything to do with us. Because it happened again. That thing that keeps happening, that happens what feels like twice every offseason, happened again. This time they waited until the season actually started, but the effect is the same. Dak Prescott got his new contract yesterday, an extension with the Cowboys. $240 million over 4 years. So that is basically the Russell Wilson contract that he got with Denver, except instead of being over 5 years, it's over 4 years. So that's how much things have changed since that Wilson extension 2 years ago. And this is now, on a per-year basis, the biggest quarterback contract of all time. 240 divided by 4 is 60 million. So 60 million a year. You can go to the contracts on OTC. You can look at them, line them up by APY. Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, they're all there at 55. So this kind of shattered the previous record, right? It wasn't a tiny little incremental bump. It wasn't, let's go to 57. Let's go to 58 even, or 57 and a half. No, they went right up to 60. So the market has been reset again. So I think that first we need to talk about Dak Prescott a little bit before we discuss this contract. Because Dak Prescott is a pretty polarizing and controversial quarterback among NFL fans. Some people think that he's elite. Some people think that he's not a starter in this league. Some people think he's backup caliber. And there's a wide range all in the middle of that. Now, I think that the people who think that he's not a starter in this league are obviously not to be taken seriously. And I'm not kidding. There are people out there who genuinely believe he should be a backup in the NFL. That's clearly not the case. And I personally am relatively pro Prescott in the when it comes to the NFL conversation right now. He's been lighting it up these last 3 years under McCarthy. You could go back to 2020 a little bit even and say that he started lighting it up back then because the numbers were fire until he got hurt in 2020. So you could really say that ever since Mike McCarthy got there, he's been statistically setting the world on fire. And he's had some good teams. He's had some good teammates. But I don't see anything there that is so over-the-top amazing that it justifies waving away his accomplishments, right? Like a quarterback like a Jared Goff, I feel pretty comfortable dismissing as being just a decent, above-average, capable quarterback because he's in such a good system with such good players around him that I don't feel like what he does statistically is that impressive. Same with a guy like Tua. Tua has put up great stats the last couple years, but I kind of dismiss that because he's got that Mike McDaniel system that I think is propping him up, and he's got really good receivers. It's easy street, right? Dak Prescott, I don't feel that way about. Yeah, he's had a really good receiver. He's had some pretty good tight ends. Zeke was good for a while. Really hasn't been a relevant football player in terms of like starter quality running backs in a while. He's had some good offensive lines for sure. But I look at these numbers and I say, yeah, this is a very good NFL quarterback. He led the league in interceptions in 2022. I understand that, which was bad. But at the same time, he was playing through injury that year. He had the busted finger, and he was toughing it out. So you throw a lot of interceptions sometimes when you can't throw it accurately. So, okay. But the 2 years where he wasn't dealing with that, he was playing maybe not quite MVP level, but very, very close to it. Last year, he actually finished second in the MVP ballot. So I think that this is a borderline elite quarterback in the NFL. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't believe that, who thinks he's much worse than that, then this contract obviously looks terrible and alarming and atrocious to you. But even someone like me that is very pro Prescott relative to, I think, the average fan, average viewer, I think that he's a top 8 quarterback. I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback. So this is a guy who I don't even think is top 5. I'm pretty confident I could name 5 or 6 quarterbacks that I think are better than Dak. Gets this. So I'm looking at this, and I just think to myself, this is like the ultimate proof that quarterback pay doesn't really operate on how quality your play is compared to the other quarterbacks. It is entirely almost a have or have not deal. You're good, you get paid. You're not good, you don't get paid. It's that simple. There's really nothing in the middle. There's a little bit in the middle reserved for quarterbacks that maybe only had one good year, or quarterbacks that are maybe they were good, but they haven't been good in a couple years, and the team decides to hedge their bets and meet the player halfway. There's very little room in the middle for that stuff, though, because, again, you look at these quarterback contracts, and I understand that a lot of these contracts were signed in previous years. They were signed in 2022, 2021. But there's no way you can tell me that Dak Prescott is a better quarterback than someone like a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes. And they're all the way down here now. And I think he's better than a guy like a Jordan Love. I think he's better than a guy like a Trevor Lawrence. So I understand from that angle that he gets paid more than them because he's better than them. I get that perspective on it. But if you're a quarterback in this league and you're good, you get whatever you want. And I think this contract is proof of that, because even someone like me that is not hating on Dak Prescott, I'm not here to completely toss him under the bus because, oh, he didn't play very well in the playoffs these last few years and he only has 2 playoff wins. I get the criticism. I understand that he needs to do something about that, but I don't think any of that makes him a lesser quarterback. I think that just makes him a really good quarterback that needs to deliver in the playoffs at some point. And I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with Dak that makes him unable to perform in the playoffs. I think he's a quarterback who simply hasn't performed at that level yet. So how does this affect the Seahawks? I mean, we are probably 6 months away, actually less. We are probably like 4 to 5 months away from getting into the weeds on a Geno Smith contract discussion. And the way in which this market is proceeding is very clear. So if Geno comes to the negotiation table, and says, I want to get paid my full potential value based on how good of a quarterback I am, then what are we talking about here? Because the market just went higher. And by the way, next offseason, Brock Purdy's going to be up for his extension. And if Dak Prescott got 60 and Brock Purdy has a good year this year, can he get 62? I think he could. I don't think he should. I think the Niners should definitely avoid that at all costs. I think the Niners would rather trade him than do that. But could somebody like a Brock Purdy get a 62 and push the market back up again? I would say so. I think that's a pretty reasonable possibility. I think that's fairly realistic here. And if that happens, what is Geno Smith going to be looking at? He can't look at the top. I understand that. He's not going to be looking at the top here because he's too old and he doesn't have the pedigree of a lot of these guys at the top here. Like, these were relatively recent first-round picks. They put up prolific numbers. They had accomplished things that were a little better than Geno's best accomplishments. But if Geno has a good year this year, and I know some people are going to say it's silly to talk about this after the way he played yesterday, but, you know, I'm going to continue to say it. The guy the guy played fine yesterday. He played about as good as you could in that circumstance, I think, or very close to it. So, what are we talking about here? Look at Kirk Cousins, $45 million a year. Most recent offseason. Kirk Cousins is an old quarterback like Geno. Geno Smith and Kirk Cousins are both in roughly the same phase of their career here. Right? And Kirk Cousins was coming off a massive Achilles tear. So people in the comments are going to say, oh, Kirk Cousins has had a much better career than Geno Smith. And that's true. Is that even going to matter next offseason when Geno Smith is entering his theoretical fourth straight season that he's been playing well? Because he'll have 3 straight good seasons now. Yeah, so if Kirk Cousins gets 45, and if the things I just discussed are true, that the NFL is purely haves or have-nots right now, is Geno Smith getting 50? Can Geno Smith ask for 50 and get it? I think he can. Again, we'll know more at the end of the year. If he doesn't play well, this is all moot. But if he does play well, if he does deliver for this Seahawks team, if the Seahawks make the playoffs, it seems to me that he's going to look at the market for players that are somewhat similar to him, in a similar position to him, and say, I want to reset that market. He's not going to reset the top of the market that Dak just set, that Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow and Jordan Love and Tua kind of helped set up at the top here. Jared Goff, you could throw him in there too. But he'll reset his own market. Maybe he's not as good as Kirk Cousins. At this point, I honestly don't think that Kirk Cousins is much of anything because, I think he's kind of cooked at this point personally. But whether he is or not, Geno's good enough to get that kind of money on the table if he wants to push for it, if he plays well this season. So prepare for it, guys. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks.